So I've clicked record. So you guys, if you're so inclined, can watch this again. You mightn't want to. And what I should do is share my screen. Now, can everyone see that slide with the big W right in the middle?
Really good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So,
Is that Mila Kunis?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
not sure.
Sorry, distraction everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say it's my wife, but it's not. So yeah, welcome again. Some of you guys may be wondering if there'll be any new faces. The answer is yes. There are a couple of people just starting off or rejoining and things. In this cohort, year 2, there's about 27 or 28 of us, so we're a good sized group, and I really look forward to working with you guys this year. So the agenda for today, I'll just remind you of some of the aims of the course, learning outcomes, etc. I'll go through the design, in particular the design with regards to this second year, which in a number of respects is different to year 1. Resources, I'll describe a lot of the elements that you guys are familiar with, but you'll see an entirely new platform in terms of the e-learning platform. So Views has been revamped, and I'm sorry that Views is not available to you yet, but it's part of the merge process that has only happened literally this week. So they've been trying to roll it out since November last year, and it takes time. Anyway, expectations, faculty, questions to do will be the other part of today. I just wanted to start by reminding you guys about what we're on, about what we're trying to achieve. The learning outcomes, we want you guys to obviously have an in-depth knowledge of normal and abnormal cardiac anatomy and physiology. Last year we tried to sort of really reinforce the normal side of things, and obviously you need a benchmark against which you can sort of judge degrees of disease and abnormality. So hopefully you'll be able to do that as we continue to look at cardiovascular disease. We want you guys to be able to utilize the ultrasound machines that you use and do them really well, mindful of the constraints and of physics. Having said that, physics is wonderful and it enables us to do a lot of things, and the engineers have developed these machines that we need to operate and do so for the benefit of patients. We wanted to identify forms of acquired and congenital disease. We'll be going in greater depth with regards to acquired and some new ground with regards to congenital diseases this semester, this year. One of the key things is we want to be able to acquire, measure and interpret high quality, the emphasis under the word high quality echocardiogram images. We're really wanting you guys to be sort of very conscious of the images and their quality that you're acquiring. You need to be able to communicate those findings. It's one thing to acquire images, but then it's another thing to be able to communicate them to physicians and others who request them. And I want you to obviously demonstrate professional behaviour, and then really at the end of the year when you're ready to graduate, hopefully you'll have developed strong skills, but that's only just the beginning, and we want you guys to have a really firm foundation from which to sort of launch out into your profession. And so we're hoping that in the second in particular will give you some skills in terms of research and other things that are going to help you to really shine as cardiac sonographers. To put it in perhaps simpler terms, I'll use a couple of images. So we want high quality images, and we want you guys to be able to use, you know, the foundational modalities that are most widely used. That is 2D and Doppler. We want you to have really good 2D imaging skills and all that involves. We want you to be able to use all the different Doppler modalities, color, continuous wave, pulse wave, Doppler, and we'll introduce some other things briefly, 3D and strain. One of the things that you saw last year was an imaging sequence for year one. There'll be a more developed full imaging sequence that by the end of the year we expect you guys to know well and to be able to complete in an exam setting. We want you guys to be able to have a sequence from which you can apply in your clinical environment. Obviously, every patient is a little bit different, but you need as it were, a skeleton from which to branch out from each time you undertake an exam. And that imaging sequence, roughly speaking, is a sequence of 65 or so images. Oftentimes you'll need to take more than that, rarely less, but anyway, more about that to come. And then secondly, strong skills. This year, we'll be looking at congenital heart disease, and one of the things with regards to developing professional skills is both semesters you'll be required to write a case report. In first semester, it'll be a case report about a patient you've seen in your imaging practice or department or wherever you may be, a patient with congenital heart disease. So there's all different types of congenital heart disease. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that you try not to do anything too complicated. Just do a case report on a congenital heart disease that you can describe, and I'll tell you about the details a little bit more to go into that case report. But anyway, this is all part of developing your professional skills. Obviously, a lot of your learning still happens in the clinical environment where you are. Clinical training needs to be maintained for the duration of the course. Now, I know that there's some people that have changed their arrangements, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I want in terms of knowing about that at the end. But it's really important that I know who your supervisors are, and that's not anything that needs to worry you. I hope that we can be very much on the same page. I want them to know what we in the faculty are trying to teach. We want that to be very clear so that they can support that they can be very much part of the learning process. And I want them very much to feel part of that. I want to express our gratitude because without them, we really struggle to teach you guys all that you need to learn. So for those of you who have been in the program for a year already, you'll kind of know what it looks like. For those who are new, in short, throughout the 2 years, if you're doing the graduate diploma, you do 8 units, and those units are sort of divided into 2 types: principles of cardiac sonography and practice of cardiac sonography. And just to remind you guys who've been around for a while, principles in general terms is the theory, and practice are the more practical elements. You'll see there that this year we're going to, in first semester, principles and practice of cardiac sonography 3. In principles 3, cardiovascular disease and case study and research skills. And in the practice of cardiac sonography 3 units, image acquisition and measurements, communication and professional practice. And then units of a similar name in the second semester of the year, with modules that are similar, but obviously the content's going to be going to be different. So again, principles more theory related, practice more practical related. Nonetheless, it's really important that you guys appreciate that these things have got to come together. Obviously, echocardiography is a very practical related profession. You've got to know the theory, but you've got to be able to put that into practice. We'll try especially hard when you guys come on campus for the seminars to reinforce that. As you who've been here before know, there'll be ultrasound machines, there'll be volunteer patients, there'll be very clearly outlined tasks for you guys to get through. And we hope that they'll be improved this year from last year. We hope to improve every year. I took a screenshot earlier today of the university website. With regards to the e-learning platform, it will be available to you guys by midday tomorrow. In order to access that, when you go to the university website, as you're looking at the screen, there's a little spot at the top of the screen I've got highlighted there with a circle. Views is the name of the e-learning platform. You'll need to log in using your student ID and unique name, and then that's what our site looks like. As you guys have been, as you guys who did the year one last year will know, it looks different. I really, really like the structure of this one. It makes, I think, it much easier to understand a logical progression behind what all the elements that we're trying to bring together. If you can see my pointer, there are a number of different zones they're called that relate to the different elements of the activities and what we're trying to teach. So there's a learning zone, and from there you'll be able to access all the lectures, all the texts, etc., etc. There's a communication zone whereby I'll post announcements, online Zoom meetings, which I hope to take more advantage of this year. An assessment zone where you'll be able to log into assessments, where you'll be able to submit assessments, etc., and a support zone there as well. More about views shortly. This semester in Principles of Cardiac Sonography 3, you're going to have to get used to the acronym that we used, PNCS3, Principles of Cardiac Sonography 3. The lectures look like this. There's an initial lecture on congenital heart disease, another one that combines congenital heart disease and pulmonary disease, then one on systemic and infiltrative diseases, and then another on pericardial diseases and cardiac masses. 3 of those lectures are online. Lectures 1, 3, and 4 are online. The third lecture on systemic and infiltrative diseases will occur when you guys come in for the on-campus seminar. It's the only one in this unit that's not going to be online. All the other ones are. Lectures start next week. So you can sort of breathe easy, just get used to things, have a good look at views from midday tomorrow, get used to that. Lectures start next week. So that's the Principles of Cardiac Sonography lectures. Practice of cardiac sonography lectures look like this. Imaging patients in congenital heart disease, imaging diseases inside and outside the heart, imaging the right heart. The right heart will be given a big focus in this particular semester, and then writing reports for congenital patients and reporting uncommon findings. You'll see when you have a look at the learning guides that will be available to you guys via views from tomorrow, that a lot of the lectures occur early on in the semester, in the first half of the semester, and that's because most of the assessment items will be due in the second half of the semester. A number of the assessment items require you guys to compose things, to collect some information, to write up cases, to critique your own work. So for that reason, the lectures will occur early, and then the assessment items with what we hope is a reasonable amount of spacing will occur in the second half of the semester. The recommended readings and additional readings you'll be able to access. This is just an example. This is just a screenshot I took from earlier today from the e-learning platform. In short, you guys should not have to buy textbooks if you're happy with, looking at things electronically. I encourage you to, if you like textbooks, and I do, to purchase some, but you have access to a vast range of material, including really good textbooks like Benita Anderson's textbook, like Catherine Otto's textbook. There'll be other things available to you, other books. There'll be lots of, articles from the American Society of Echocardiography, for example, that I'll post early on in the semester and draw to your attention. So there's lots of resources for you guys to draw from. In terms of practice of cardiac sonography, there's a section on the VUE site that you can go in, and you'll see there that it's just looks a little bit different from the principles. There's an additional textbook. There's one of the seminal works there from the American Society, and there'll be others available to you as well, all via the VUE site, and you'll be able to access them 24/7. That's what the clinical school here at Blacktown looks like. So I'm sitting in a small room somewhere in that building there for you guys who haven't been here before. For those of you who have been here before, there's a whole lot of development happening, and it's going to look a whole lot different when you arrive again. When you do come on campus for the on-campus seminars, the emphasis is really developing good practical skills. So there'll be a number of tutors here this year to support you in your learning. You'll meet Kenny and Kristen the first time round. They're going to be here. There's going to be a master's student here as well helping out. There'll be myself, so hopefully you'll get lots of support when you do come in. The first on-campus seminar is Thursday the 4th and Friday the 5th of April. Now, later on this week, I'll tell you a little bit more about the times. Things are still being ironed out, but in short, days will be from roughly 1:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, just like last year, med students are here in the morning. We have the afternoon and evenings. That's what the way it works for the moment. In terms of getting here, public transport is an option, but I think generally speaking, driving is a little bit easier. Parking, there's a big parking station here that you can access that does cost. If you have any concerns about traveling here, just send me an email. I will make a map available, obviously, and give you an indication as to how to access the building. For those people who are new to the course, you will need an identification card. That card will give you swipe access to this building. You'll also need it for all to attend examinations and things like that. So at some point, you're going to have to visit one of the Western Sydney University campuses. There are a number of campuses. There's Parramatta, Campbelltown. There's others too. Wherever there's a student central and access a student card. In terms of assessments, they look a little bit different this year than they did last year. The assessments for principles of cardiac sonography look a little bit like this. You guys will be familiar with with the online exams. The online quizzes are just like they were last year. Obviously, the content will be different, but in short, there's a 25-minute timed exam with multiple choice questions, 4 multiple choice questions, single best answer scenario. Principles of Cardiac Sonography 3, there's a research assignment, and I won't go into too much detail about what is involved in that, but the research assignment has 2 parts. One part whereby you've got to develop a spreadsheet, and in short, you're just drawing from your logbook, from your imaging record, and you're going to list 40 patients. You're going to have a list of males and females totaling 40. So it's 2 lists, they're separate lists. And you're going to indicate in columns a number of parameters that you'll be able to see when you access the learning guide. They're parameters that you guys should get used to measuring. And then the second part of this involves just describing aspects of 2 of the patients, one patient's LV systolic function, another patient's LV diastolic function. Don't get too concerned about writing all this down or anything like that. You'll be able to see the learning guide soon. I'm just introducing you to it. Furthermore, when you guys come on campus, I'll talk to you more about that, and by then, no doubt, you'll have some questions to ask in relation to that. The case report will be due close to the end of semester. It's worth 45%, so it's the most heavily weighted of all the assessment items. Just like a case report, you'd be expected to submit, if you're wanting to submit something to a journal that has certain elements, a title, introduction, a case description, wherein you list the relevant clinical information plus the echocardiographic findings, a discussion whereby you compare what you found against published data and highlight different elements or interesting elements about what you found. There are images that need to be made part of the report, conclusion and references as well. Again, we'll go into that in more depth when you guys come on campus, and you'll be able to read a little bit more about that when you see the learning guide. So they're the Principles of Cardiac Sonography 3 assessments. Practice of Cardiac Sonography 3 looks a little bit more like what you're used to. There is an imaging evaluation, and what that simply means is we want you to be a little bit critical of your own work, and you'll have to submit some images and measurements that you've made on 2 different occasions from patients with some different types of diseases. Images and measurements from one patient, images and measurements from another patient with different diseases. We want you to critique 2D images and Doppler images acquired from different windows, and you'll be able to read up about that. It's a really important skill to start thinking carefully and looking at your images to determine, whether or not the measurement you made is accurate, whether or not it indicates to the physician who's going to see it exactly, what that person's disease or the state of that person's heart is.